You know, like you, I'm sure you have your favorite TTC story. And most of them, I'm afraid, Andy, would not be very cheerful. I remember under a previous administration pointing out every few months, taking little smartphone camera pictures regularly for 18 months, an open, unreconstructed bit of asbestos dribbling ceiling at the King Street subway station. It's the sort of thing that doesn't give you much encouragement about the functioning of the system as a whole, if even something as simple as that couldn't be resolved in 18 months. But our guest today was a huge get for Toronto because he understands that part of transit. He understands it's not about a group of engineers running a bunch of trains, it's about customer service and happy customers. Mr. Byford is an Englishman who helped transform one of the world's most famous and difficult transit systems, the London Underground, applied his skills down under to their less ancient but somewhat challenged system in Sydney, Australia, and he has already, as I think everybody here who rides the TTC can attest, made a huge difference to our city. He's a train guy. He understands that his job is not merely to make the trains run on time, but to make customers happy with their experience on his train. He's brought an informal confidence and a performance-oriented focus to a system badly in need of those skills in its leader. He came into a city and a transit system at a very low ebb. Anger and complaints about TTC service were at an all-time high. You know the dinner table joke, I'm sure you've heard. The TTC motto was, "We're not happy till you're unhappy." He made customer service a real performance measure in the first day on the job. And he's hired people whose job it is to make sure his millions of passengers leave the subway smiling. The leader of the TTC has a delicate and difficult task, balancing the demands of many masters, always under the glare of intense public scrutiny. I think you'd agree with me that as a newcomer, he's navigated that challenge with consummate skill, given a mayor, a TTC chair, and a city council who could not be less aligned over transit policy. Andy is here at a moment, we hope, of transformative change in our transit systems after more than a decade of paralysis. It's an exciting prospect to think of new lines, new trains, new connections in a world-class system after so many years of frustration. Andy, Torontonians are grateful for your willingness to commit this stage of your career to delivering that vision. We're all ears.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Robin, for that warm welcome. Distinguished guests, top table, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, FNGs. I'd just like to say thank you for the invitation and the honour of addressing the Empire Club here in Toronto today. When I was invited to speak at the Empire Club, my first reaction was, as an Englishman, as a patriotic Brit, was one of quiet satisfaction to learn that here at least there exists a part of the empire where the sun never set. And I've deliberately worn my old Canadian flag cufflinks today as a mark of respect. But in doing my research for today's event, I read with some amazement the history of this illustrious establishment, and I looked on with awe at the glittering array of past speakers. It's therefore with a sense of pride, honour, and humility that I represent the TTC here today, mindful as I am that I follow in the footsteps of political giants such as Reagan, Churchill, and Thatcher, of Canadian icons such as Trudeau and Diefenbaker, and of world figures like Gandhi and the Dalai Lama. And if you're thinking, hang on a minute, we've seen him speak here before. That was the other guy, that was Vladimir Putin. Well, I thought I'd say it before you did, okay? I'd therefore like to thank you, Robin, and the club directors for affording me the honour to speak about my plans for the TTC today. May I first acknowledge the presence also here today of my boss, Karen Stintz, Chair of the TTC and City Councillor, and my friend and colleague, the CEO of Metrolinx, Bruce McQuaig. A lot has happened since my wife Alison and I arrived in Toronto in late October 2011. I have barely paused for breath since joining the TTC in what has been a roller coaster ride so far. From flooded stations to shot employees, from political intrigue to frontline controversy, you name it, it has happened. Being head of the TTC, as Robin said, is a 24/7 public fishbowl that is not for the faint-hearted. The TTC is a media story every day to an extent that I have never experienced in a near quarter-century career of international public transit. And people have asked me, now upon reflection, do I wish I'd stayed in Australia for a quieter life? No way, no way. I am immensely proud to run the TTC, what is now the third largest transit system in North America, in the fourth largest city in this great continent. So I'm really pleased to be here. And building on the hard work of my predecessors in this hot seat, the organisation that I head up is carrying record numbers that continue to rise. This year, the TTC will provide some 528 million rides as our city expands at record pace. This equates to 1.7 million customer rides a day. And you know what? Most of those journeys pass off completely uneventfully. Most of these journeys, nothing happens. That is to say, we get our customers from A to B without incident or delay. But a lot goes into making an uneventful journey. 12,500 TTC staff work tichelessly, day in, day out, in all weathers, and often for little thanks, to meet growing customer demands and increased societal expectations. Our bus maintenance team keep our vehicles going for approximately double the average North American industry average in terms of vehicle life. While over on the streetcar divisions, our staff make our own streetcar parts precisely because the companies that made those streetcars originally have passed into the annals of history. This is an amazing organisation. This is the same much maligned TTC that covers 70% of its operating costs through the fare box, on the back of the lowest operating subsidy of practically any Western transit authority that you can name. So it truly is a remarkable organisation, and I'm immensely proud of the staff that work there, most of whom do a fantastic job. But I didn't leave the sunny shores of Australia to maintain the status quo. I saw a golden opportunity to be part of something very special, and that was to lead the team that will modernise the TTC from top to bottom, transform customer satisfaction, and restore the Toronto Transit Commission to the position that it once had, namely the jewel in the crown of North American transit. I saw straight away that a more business-like approach was needed, along with a customer service revolution, to show the people that pay our wages that we're serious about making change. What I could not have foreseen was my sudden dramatic elevation to the top job after just 3 short months in Canada. My predecessor's departure was both a challenge and an opportunity. A challenge in that my learning curve literally disappeared off the chart. An opportunity in that I had free rein to make change that I knew needed to be done. And also an opportunity in that I could now move at my own invariably impatient speed. The head of the union here in Toronto said, and I quote, "Mr. Byford wants everything done yesterday." Well, you know, Bob, that's true, I do. So where are we now? 1 year into the job, a lot has happened. We have reorganized the entire enterprise to put the customer at the center of our thinking, including creation of bespoke front and back centers of excellence service delivery teams to expedite improvement. We have delivered quick wins such as all-day in-service litter picks to improve the cleanliness of our subway service. We've rolled out debit and credit facilities so that customers can purchase Metro cards at every station. That was achieved back in December of last year. And we've refurbished the previously grim subway washrooms in response to customer feedback. We've delivered high-level targets to track our service delivery, to motivate our teams, and to better hold us to account, to allow other people to hold us to account. And we introduced the TTC's first ever customer charter to publicly commit us to time-bound, value-added service improvements every quarter, again, to show that we mean business. It was important to me that we were not saying to Torontonians, you have to wait 5 years before you see improvements. No way. More fundamentally, we spent this first year building the basic management tools of a modern business, putting into place the framework that is the norm in every other transit authority where I've ever worked, but that were lacking at the TTC. There was no vision statement. There is now. There were no challenge meetings to hold senior executives to account for their departmental performance. There are now. And there were no key performance indicators against which we could measure our progress. Well, there are now. Year one has been about addressing what I call the basics. That is, challenging mediocrity, holding people to account, using data to drive improvement, and obsessing about the detail. It's been about making our activities more transparent, providing clear direction and strong leadership. And it's been about giving the TTC back its self-confidence, replacing a siege mentality with a can-do desire to excel. One major element was still missing. While business plans existed in the form of an annual budget submission, I think quite remarkably, there was no corporate plan. Well, today, I can announce the creation of such a document. Our new plan sets out in detail what the TTC must achieve between now and 2017. It's a 5-year plan. It is built around 7 strategic objectives, the sum of which will deliver our vision of a transit system that makes Toronto proud. It lists the big projects that will be rolled out over the next 5 years, game-changing programs that will transform customer experience. And this is it. Still in draft, about to be issued. And I will put this on the internet in the spirit of transparency that I want to see engendered top to bottom in everything that we do at the TTC. This document will be released shortly and will describe to you those changes we're going to make. I want to highlight just some of the key initiatives within each of the 7 objectives. The first objective is that of safety. I'm a former safety director and I have a very strong view on how safety should be managed. And while the TTC has an excellent safety record, we can never afford to rest on our laurels. So specific activities within the safety objective will include a new approach to risk-based decision-making and management of programs. So if, as is often the way, in tight times we are required to make budget savings, never again will we make those budget decisions based upon just a figure and what appears to be the best choice of the day. We will make budget decisions based upon a formulated, quantified risk assessment that sets out what are the greatest risks. Those will be the last that I would want to touch. So safety will be one of the key objectives. It's always going to be the one that's front and foremost. The second key objective will be around the customer, an area that, as Robin said, I have particularly focused on since I got here. And there are a whole raft of initiatives that will pan out over the next 5 years. One of which is a customer-focused station business model. Only last month, I launched I introduced our 6 new group station managers, high-quality individuals who have been largely recruited from outside the TTC in order to transform the subway service that we offer to our customers. But we will go beyond that. We will develop and deliver a comprehensive plan to safely remove guards from trains, and to replace the station collector role with that of a highly trained, proactive station supervisor. And larger locations will also have customer service assistants. The next key objective is that of people. This plan is no more than a document if it's not backed up by the efforts of our 12,500 staff. So there will be smart targets set to every single member of TTC staff from top to bottom that will set out exactly what it is that is required of them on an individual basis. And this will be an iterative, two-way process where employees will know what also we're expecting from them, but what they can expect from us by way of better management and better supervision. We will review our existing training and development programs to ensure that they meet business needs and to ensure that customer service and that customer thinking rides throughout all of those programs. The fourth area is that of assets. The current TTC suffers from unreliability of its assets, largely as a result of inadequate funding over recent years. So we need to make sure that every element of our asset is understood, that it is renewed in good time, and that we drive up the reliability of our signals, of our trains, of our elevators, of our escalators. Every aspect of our service must be improved. And it goes beyond just pure reliability of the service. I want to see cleanliness and customer ambience given equal attention. We will undertake a programme of proactive service management, which, to be fair, we do today, but I think there is way more that we can do in valuing you as customers and moving to procedures that are customer-led rather than production-led. So I will not accept that it is impossible to do something about bunching of vehicles. I will not accept that short-turning of vehicles is inevitable. So we're going to do something about that, and you'll see much more supervision on the streets. The fifth area is that of growth. In fall of 2016, we will open the Toronto-York subway Spadina extension. At the turn of the year, we will open the second platform at Union Station. And working with our colleagues at Metrolinx, a whole raft of LRT lines will begin to take effect and be introduced and come on stream at the end of around 2020. And the downtown relief line and station modernisation programmes will also be brought forward within our plans. The sixth area is that of financial sustainability. I have made it clear to my team we should remember two things. Number one, they're not our dollars, and number two, the customer is always king. So there will be a top-to-bottom cost review of every aspect of our operation at the TTC. Starting from a zero-based perspective, we will look at every aspect of our operations to build upon the work that we've already undertaken in reducing our cost base. And the seventh and final area is that of reputation, which to a certain extent is driven by the issue of this document and the execution of the plans contained within it. Over time, it is my intention that customers, media, other stakeholders, government, politicians, people will, by the end of this 5 years, say, you know what, we didn't believe it would happen, but the TTC has definitely changed. So there will be new trains, new buses, and new streetcars, a smart card, a smart new uniform, and smart new people. We will open a line to York Region, and we will reinvest in a new line in Scarborough, converting the SRT to LRT. That is the current plan, right? Okay. Okay. All this must be achieved while delivering service to an ever-expanding customer base. Project coordination will be a challenge that must be got right. Our budgeting and estimating has to get exponentially better if we are to change our reputation in the way that I just described. Throw into the mix the Pan Am Games in 2015 and the Metrolinx-led new LRT line construction, and the scale of our challenge becomes immediately apparent. So it's not all about new equipment and flashy new lines. Our processes and systems are archaic, and our procedures impede progress and customer service. A major part of our plan will address people performance and cultural transformation. Decades-old practices need to be swept away in a productive new partnership with our unions. Our cost base must undergo radical scrutiny, and this work has already started with the controversial contracting out of non-core activities. Managers have been put on notice that our leadership style must change. Everyone needs to up their game. I want to work for a TTC that overtly recognises good performers while relentlessly managing the errant few. I want to push accountability down to the front line, and I want customers to feel valued at every stage of their journey. To deliver this sea change, I need political support and freedom to do what needs to be done. And in Karen Stintz, I have a boss that gives me both. But that support needs to come from across council, and the TTC needs to work on regaining the trust of our elected officials. It's back to that issue around building our reputation and restoring trust in what we do. I also need time and sustained funding if this bold plan is to succeed. And funding is a real issue. While I believe that more efficiencies can be found, the TTC simply cannot continue to accommodate millions more rides without an affordable increase in subsidy. On the capital front, the subway is not getting any younger. Substantial funds will be required over the next decade to upgrade track and other infrastructure, and there will be disruption while we undertake this work. Additional capacity must be built across the city, and crucial projects such as the Downtown Relief Line must become a reality if we are to keep Toronto moving. So these are indeed exciting times at the Better Way. Staff tell me that there is a buzz about the place and that they welcome the new approach. As we approach our 100th anniversary in 2021, we have never been more essential to the economic success of our city. The winds of change are blowing through the TTC, and we now have a plan around which to drive our complete transformation. When I look back to the summer of 2011, when I was weighing up whether or not to come to Toronto, I knew that this would be a big job. But in reality, it's the biggest, most exciting challenge of my professional career. If we can deliver this plan, which we must, we will have transformed the TTC and its reputation within 5 years. I'm convinced that with adequate funding, courageous political support, and a rejuvenated, well-led, and focused workforce, we can do it. I am quite certain that we can get the TTC back to its position at the pinnacle of North American transit, and I'm quite determined to deliver that vision of a transit system that makes Toronto proud. Thank you.
Stay here. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy has agreed to take some questions. We have a microphone here, and we have a microphone over there. And over here. Who wants to be first?
On here.
Please.
Thank you. Andy, congratulations on a terrific talk, and I think there's a lot of optimism to be taken from some of the plans that you've outlined. My question is this: your biggest challenge as an operator has to be funding and the politics of funding. One idea that's floating around with the provincial election possibly coming up, we'll know that soon enough, is the idea of uploading at least the subway system to the provincial level, as has been proposed by Tim Hudak. I just wondered what your view was on that. Would that help? Would it help in regards to stable funding?
Okay. I sort of understand to a certain extent the attraction of combining the TTC subways with GO's provincial commuter lines. So I get that to a politician that might look like an attractive proposition, but to me, at a stroke, you would take away the absolute abiding strength of the TTC, which is multimodal integration. So I speak as a former operations director of railways in both Australia and the UK, as Robin mentioned. And my view would be, I look back to how I used to have to beg when my railway was disrupted. I would have to beg bus companies to give me buses when my service was interrupted. And invariably, the answer would come back, well, either show us the money, or, sorry, the buses are all committed because they're on school runs or whatever. And one of the beauties of the TTC and one of the absolute abiding strengths of the TTC is if, as happens from time to time, we have a service interruption, it's fantastic to be able to say, buses, if not immediately, but there are buses, we know what to do, we've got well-rehearsed plans, we can substitute the rail service with a bus service that's immediately or fairly quickly available. So I think, my point would be operationally, I don't think that does not benefit the customer. And two, I think financially that would give the City of Toronto a huge problem because the subway element of the TTC cross-subsidises the remaining elements of the TTC, the bus feeders and the streetcar network. So I think it would actually cause a lot of financial problems that maybe people don't realise. So I guess my view would be, if there is to be a change, I think it's all or nothing. You either leave it as it is and we get the TTC humming and working as well as it should do, and Bruce and his team run Metrolinx, or you transfer it lock, stock and barrel. The TTC will be uploaded en masse as an entity into the provincial forum. There is a more radical way of doing it, which I haven't rehearsed with Bruce, but my personal view would be that you get people to focus on their areas of expertise, and you pin organizations down absolutely to the core business of what they're there to do, which is a bit of it's similar to what I've been doing with the limited contracting out we've done. You look at what is the core business that you're trying to deliver. So it seems to me that Metrolinx's mandate is to specify schemes to improve transit across the province and to identify and build additional capacity. So there is a bit of me that thinks, well, what you could do is more than ever mandate Metrolinx to have that planning and expansive role, and transfer Go, I haven't rehearsed this to you, but transfer Go to the TTC so that you've then got a planning and new construction agency. That's what they do. And then the TTC, you take away our arm that builds new capacity, because Metrolinx would be doing that, but then you make the TTC, a broader TTC, also responsible for Go, and insist then that that become a service delivery arm that excels at what it does. In other words, you have two separate functions, one that is there to plan and one that is there to obsess about the detail of service delivery. I think there's different models, but my one strong message would be, if you're going to split don't split the TTC up. If you're going to do anything with the TTC, do it all or nothing.
We have a question over here.
Thank you for an excellent speech. I'm concerned about congestion on all these condos. To give you a very specific example, I live on Lakeshore, and the roadway between the apartments and the highways and the railway, etc., is less than this. Down the road, the condo builders, it's rumored, are going to build condos for 30,000 additional people. I think you'll need triple-decker buses to get through there, and that's all you'll get through. I'd like your strategy in dealing with this potential horrendous congestion.
Sure. Good transit planning gets transit into place before demand. So in other words, you put the transit into the environment before the need becomes apparent. But what we're tending to do in Toronto at the moment is play catch up. So yeah, I go along the Lakeshore. I was down at Liberty Village the other day, and mindful of the crowding that we already experience on the King streetcar, it does scare me a bit that you've got such huge expansion happening, which is great in a way. It's a good news story for Toronto that there's a sea of cranes out there and that there's all this additional economic activity being generated. But how on earth are we going to keep up with it? So all the more reason that we need to stop talking and start building and get some spades into the ground, which is where I really welcome the work that Metrolinx are doing in terms of the big move. And although I regularly bang on about the downtown relief line, I've never said that that's the only project that needs to happen. Absolutely, we need to do something about the waterfront. Absolutely, we need to crack on and get these other LRTs built. And absolutely, we need to look at some other congestion busting schemes, because otherwise we will always be playing catch up, and we need to be moving beyond charts on diagrams and getting spades into the ground. I think Torontonians expect that of us.
Gentleman at the back of the room.
Oh, would that be me? Andy, what other country could we have than ours? Here I am. I haven't even paid my luncheon fee, asking you a question. Now, think about it, folks. We live in Canada. We should be very, very proud of that, because we cannot do that in very many countries. Andy, we are as others see us. And when my children started to call me old crusty, I said, well, that's what I am. So that's what I'm known by. But in this case, Andy, I think that you are a gentleman. Why do I say that? Because the TTC has operated, as I understand from the drivers, I get a lot of people on drivers, just a moment, this is very important, who tell me that the TTC is run as a military organization. The workers, as the soldiers, don't question the top. And I think, Andy, you bring a change to that.
Thank you.
Because I think that the people, the workers, now can come to you. We, the clients of the TTC, can come to you. And that is so important. And Andy, I think, you know, you had the TTC, what a big mistake. Had St. Clair shut down for 2 years, and now they got to close it up again because these streetcars cannot fit them. What a big mistake. Andy, this is where you come in.
Okay, so might I just answer those points? So first up, you made a point about militaristic management style. I agree with you. We have a lot of good managers at the TTC, but I think the management style in pockets is one-dimensional and needs to change, which is why I made reference to that when I talked about the people element of my plan. I am quite convinced that the way we manage people influences the way they behave, which directly then influences the way they come across to customers, which influences the way the media then report upon us, and probably what stakeholders think about us. So we have to break out of that rather depressing cycle where people are maybe being sullen with customers, but it's because of the way that they're treated, which is why I said, and I use my words deliberately, I've put my managers on notice that we have to change the way that we go about things. The days of staff feeling like a number have to change. So what I want to overtly do is differentiate between good staff who we should develop, cherish and motivate, and those small few who need to be properly managed. It seemed to me when I arrived at the TTC that we had things completely back to front, that good staff's efforts went completely unnoticed, and meanwhile the few bad people got away with murder. It's completely wrong. So I've said, even to the union, we are going to overtly acknowledge the good people, but we're going to relentlessly manage those few that step out of line. And to be fair to the head of the union, he said, I can't argue with that.
Andy.
Thank you very much, sir. We've got to move on. Over in this corner of the room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Byford, what can customers expect from the new managers, station managers, over the next 6 months?
What can we expect?
What can customers expect?
Sure, absolutely. So the new group station managers, and it was quite a revelation to people, I think, that 5 out of the 6 came from outside the TTC, 4 out of the 6 were women. So partly, I'm deliberately, although the best people won in an open competition, I am overtly trying to change the mix of management and refresh the management pot, if you will, but also change the actual culture of management within the TTC. So these are quality people. In November, we will assign, every member of station staff will be assigned to one of 6 groups. So where at the moment they rotate around the system, which I think has a huge disbenefit because station staff don't really get a loyalty to their home station because they don't really have one, and that they very rarely get actual direct management by their manager because they only see them once in a blue moon. They will be assigned to a specific group, and there will be 6 groups, and those individuals will get to know their stations, they'll get to know their customers, and you'll get to know them. So a big immediate benefit will be that there will be direct, active, positive management of staff performance. We are going to launch a new uniform at the beginning of 2014. I will certainly expect those station managers to require high standards. I want there to be a smart new uniform, and I want people to wear it. But more than that, these new group station managers will oversee standards at their locations. So if, for example, an escalator engineer turns up at the height of the morning peak in order to take an escalator out of service for basic maintenance, which does happen every now and again. A good station manager, and I used to be a station manager and what was called a landlord of the station, will say, no way, come back after the peak. So the job that they will have is to obsess about the detail on their group of stations to the level that I and my senior managers just can't do. So they will be supported. They will have duty station managers with them as well. But the whole essence will be to drive up performance at those stations. So to make to begin down that road of making everyday everyday service that much more consistent in terms of the quality of outputs. So you'll see them. I expect them to be visible on their stations. They'll be wearing name badges. Their job is at least 60% out and about, not sitting in offices.
We have time for one last question. I'll ask it then. Can you promise you'll stay?
Well, I never say never. I have come here for the long term. There's a huge job to do. The easiest thing in the world would have been to have stayed in Australia. I remember the weekend that I was trying to decide, should I take the plunge, should I leave Australia, or should I come to Toronto? And it was probably a bad weekend to do it, because my wife and I had flown up to the Great Barrier Reef, and we were actually snorkeling in these crystal clear, beautiful warm waters, and there was a nice lunch, and it was nice and shallow, so there weren't any sharks, but there was lots of big fish buzzing about. And I remember we popped up, took our masks off, and I said, so I've got to decide. And I said to my wife, please, Canadians, don't take offense. I said, are we mad? You know, we must be crazy. This place is paradise. And it was a great job, and I would have almost certainly moved on to be the CEO of what's called RailCorp down there. But you know what? It just gnawed away at me. I'd been to Toronto lots of times. My wife's Canadian. She's from Ottawa. And I'd always been intrigued by the TTC. It's very unusual in this day and age in transit to find an organization that is multimodal, so buses, streetcars, subways, LRT, wheel-trans. That's really unusual. So it was a compelling challenge, not least because I sort of learn about different modes. But what a great time to be here, you know, that everyone's talking about transit. Something has to happen. You know, some of these schemes just have to come to fruition. So that plus the compelling opportunity to transform an organization that doesn't have the best of reputations, that's seen as arrogant, that was seen as secretive. Someone once described it as an impenetrable monolith. Someone who may even be in this room. And I want to be part of the team that transforms the TTC. So in a long roundabout way, yes, I am going to stay.
Could I ask Robert Hart to come and thank our guest?
Hello, everybody. I think that was a very excellent, impressive speech, and I also like very much the answers. And Andy, I very often get the same question, because, you know, I'm not born here in Canada, so I'm also here on a kind of a longer delegation. I always get the same question, how long will you stay? And as long as people applaud later on when you say I stay for longer, so you will have success. And so you're doing a good job, so that's very good. So, and I would like to thank you, Andy, for coming to speak to us today and for your thoughtful and encouraging remarks. So, and I must say, I asked a colleague of mine, because that's the first time that I give an appreciation remark here for a speaker, how long should this remark be? So, and he said, okay, Robert, and I know you like to speak, stay shorter than the original speaker, so I will be brief. So, clearly, transportation and transit are on everybody's radar these days, while recent focus has been on revenue options, to raise the money for that and to expand transit. We know transit and transportation planning is more complicated than that. And it's more about just the money, it's about the entire system. And what we heard from you, it's about customers. And that is what I heard. So it's your approach to customer centricity, to transparency in the system, to accountability. I think it's very important, and I think that also will drive the discussion forwards, that people buy in and also support you and your team to make it happen. And it's also about the transformation of the existing system. And the issues related to congestion and the implication of congestions for the greater Toronto area are becoming ever more clean, and the plan you have laid out will help to mitigate these impacts. The scope of the plan underlies the fact that you and the TTC will play a critical role in the evolution of the public transport system, and the transportation system will with that serve the region very well. We at Siemens, and I speak for the entire industry, and we have some of the industry representatives here in the room, so we are prepared to do our part and look forward to working with you and your staff and other stakeholders in building a transportation system that truly meets the needs of the current and the future generations. Thank you again for your remarks, and we wish you and your staff luck in the implementation of your plan. Thank you very much, Andy.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel better about transit than when I arrived already. And I just want to say to my political friends here gathered, Mr. Parker, Ms. Stintz, your job is to give him what he needs to be a success. Thank you very much for arriving and giving us such a visionary speech. We have a book here called Who Said That, which is a collection of the best of. You'll appear in the next volume. Thank you, Andy. You should have a list at your table of upcoming events. There are several very interesting events. We have on the 29th, next Wednesday, a venture capital panel. I guess that's 2 Wednesdays, with a series of leading venture capital people from town. On the 5th of June, we have the governor of Kentucky with his vision for his state. On the 20th of June, we have His Eminence Cardinal Thomas Collins, interviewed by Anna Maria Tremonti. Finally, let me thank Siemens Canada for sponsoring our event today, the Toronto Port Authority for sponsoring our student table, our National Post print sponsor, Rogers TV, our TV sponsor. We're very grateful to all of you for your ongoing support. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you all for coming. We hope to see you again soon. This meeting is adjourned.